everyone, it's Carolyn here to share more channeled messages. This time I'm actually going to talk about what I had alluded to in the past video of pest control during this time. You might remember if you saw my last video, I talked about planting seeds for the times to come, and that this December is plant that seed, and then what we have to do is we have to tend it, we have to water it, we have to take care of it, we have to do pest control. And then I launched into talking about how, we do have energetic pests, all right? As we continue through this journey of ascension and awakening, we show more light. We are more open, and that light attracts pests or energies that may not serve us. And in my experience, can also be other souls. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you my journey. This is totally my journey. 4 different types of, I'll just say, energies, and then we'll talk, because everything's energetics, right? Everything is energy, even us. So I'm going to just talk it in terms of energy, but then I'll define what kind of energy I'm talking about that I have had to deal with this year from April to now. Okay, I've had a dramatic year, and this has never happened to me before. So I have 4 different types I'm going to talk about, just so you can maybe identify those if it happens to occur for you, where an energy may come, and I'll just say join you for a period of time. Hopefully what this will do is help you identify when these things may happen to you, because again, there are opportunistic energies out there. There are other energies out there that may join us for purpose, which I'll talk about in a minute. But most importantly, I'm going to share with you the process I used to manage through this, and to also say, bye-bye energies, we don't need this anymore. So again, I've had some dramatic experiences this year. It's time for me to share them with you, and I'm just going to go all out and give you the detail that I received when I was going through the scenario. And there's a part of me that's like, I can't share that. No, I'm going to share this, because I think many of us may be going through these things and we don't talk about them, but we need to, because it's important that we understand that during these very strong energetic times, and December is a perfect time for this, right? For us to be talking about this. We're gaining in more light. We're gaining in more frequency. We're rising dimensionally. And as we do, remember what happens. We are seen more. So that's also why we talk so much about self-care in this journey, all right? And we're not going to go into that again. You've heard enough of that from me, I think. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you take away at least a few things for your journey. As I always say, another puzzle piece for the puzzle of your own life journey, your ascension and your awakening journey. So I'm Carolyn Zaiser. I'm a channel, I'm a distance energy healer, and I'm a spiritual awakening mentor. And I offer these channels and this information to help you along your awakening and ascension journey. So for those of you who are new, thank you very much for joining me here today. Like, share, and subscribe as you will. It really helps me get the messages out, because the YouTube algorithm really likes and shares. So thank you so much for joining me. So those of you who are new, check out in the description box below. It takes you to actually a video you're going to get on how to create flow in your body, but what I also offer to you is more free content through my email list. Once a week, I will send out a channeled message from the Light Keepers that supports you in your journey forward. And oftentimes what I'll do too, if I decide to do a discount or a special or anything like that, the people on the email list will receive that first. So check it out there. All right, we're going to get going today. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the 4 experiences that I had, which I have broken down into what I'll just call unique energies. Now remember, everything is energy, all right? And then I'm going to define what that energy actually was to me. So I'm going to explain all 4 of these, and then I'm going to explain to you also in each of these my experience with them. And then at the very end, I'm going to explain to you my process for managing through each of these. It was a learned process, let me tell you. So the first one is, okay, they just said is rare. Okay, they just said is not that common. Is not as common as the others that we'll be talking about. They want to be clear about that. This is actually when we have contracted with another soul, another person in our journey, another actual human in our journey, to take over some of what they would potentially be going through if we weren't there to step in. So this is somebody typically with maybe some really big karmic stuff they need to deal with, and that piling upon and piling upon and piling upon one individual would be overwhelming and not allow them to move forward in their journey. So what we've done in advance before we've incarnated is we've said, okay, when you get to this stage in your journey, I'm going to show up and I'm going to take on that part, that layer for you, and you're going to do the rest. But it eases their journey. Because remember, this is a collective journey. It's not about not helping others. But the interesting part is we actually do this energetically before we incarnate on occasion. I've actually had two circumstances, and I'm going to talk about one of them today. So in my journey, I've had two people that are very close to me have massive karma to clear in this lifetime, which we all do, right? But so much so that before I incarnated with them, said, I'll take a piece of this and clear this for you, okay? So the one I'm going to talk about today started back in April, and it's a soul who's very, very close to me in this human incarnation. And what occurred during this time for me is I had never before had an anxiety or a panic attack. And I suddenly started to have these in April, and then they journeyed with me all the way through September of this year. They were very disconcerting, very concerning. I thought it was fully Kundalini. I know it was a Kundalini experience in one instance, which I actually then did a video on for that. However, what I learned over time was, oh no, the experiences I was having were directly related to this close soul to me who was going through the clearing of a very powerful, impactful to the collective past life and had a lot to clear out. There's so much there that what I did was I said, I'll take over your suffering and your anxiety and your drowning. Okay? Yep, actually, you're drowning. And I will feel that in my body, and I will clear that for you through the process that I have. So what happened in April, I ended up with, and I talked about this in another video, but I'll briefly remind you, I woke up in the middle of the night. I'd actually gotten up and I'd come back to bed. It's always when I walk back to bed, and these are repeated exact identical circumstances that happened to me then. I came back to bed, and all of a sudden, it's like I was lifted out of my body, but I had another layer of me, like I had an overlay. I was dizzy. I couldn't walk. I was wobbling back and forth. All my energy went to the center of my body. My arms and legs were cold. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't see. I was seeing my depth perception. It was very strange. It was almost like I was in a hole, and I couldn't see what was of any depth or kind of width. It was more like I guess I'll just say, looking through a telescope. Every move I tried to make was extremely difficult. I could barely get back to bed. Then when I did, I couldn't breathe. That was probably the worst part. And I'm telling you all of this because some of you are going to say, yeah, that's an anxiety and panic attack. Because yes, exactly, that's what I was diagnosed with. However, that's how the clearing of this life for this individual showed up for me every single time, all right? Because I was taking on this stress and this anxiety of what this individual was actually going through in their journey, but I was processing it so they didn't have to go to that extreme of processing and probably very much have a major dark night of the soul. Because right now, we're needing to ignite forward, and there are new things happening that we might not have considered happening so that we can all move forward in a more, I'll just say, fluid fashion and not just get stuck in our stuff on our own. So the breathing part was the part that took me almost over the edge into panic. But what I realized is this breathing part was the most frightful for me. And what I then quickly realized as this was happening, because it was happening all so fast, was that as I thought about the fact that, oh my God, am I suffocating? It would get worse. So I had to quickly move myself out of fear, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Anyway, so my symptoms continued to get worse, not better. I tried to do everything I could, like lying down, just going back to sleep, ignoring it. No, it got worse. So I had this great desire to move. I couldn't lay down. So I got up and I moved around, but it was horrible because I was so wobbly. Well, I live alone. So one of the first things that I thought of is, I did the human thing of thinking I'm having a heart attack or I'm having an aneurysm or some kind of thing that needs medical attention. So I'm like, I'm going to the emergency room. At the same time, what was happening to me, and I think this is critical, is I never lost the human me. I never went full on into losing myself. The human was always being logical and thoughtful about it, but it was weaving in with all this other stuff that was happening, the symptoms, the what could almost be termed as panic. So there was always Carolyn going, okay, wait a minute, what is this really? And then being able to tap into her team, I asked my spirit team, I said, what's going on here? And I wasn't real good at listening because I was so in the thought mode of what's happening to me. And they said, panic attack, panic attack, panic attack. Well, I didn't understand it at all, where it was coming from. But what I then ended up doing is going to the emergency room and get diagnosed as panic attack, anxiety attack. They do all my vitals. They do everything. I'm perfectly healthy. And of course, that was $5,555 later. Yes, exactly. That was the entirety of my emergency room bill. Now, if that's not a message, right? So anyway, with the angel numbers and everything. So needless to say, I came home, and that is exactly what my follow-up scenarios were like when they would happen again. So I started to have them more frequently, but they were probably at a 50% rate of what happened in the very first one. And then I continued having more of these and more of these, and it was all anxiety ridden. It was all just an awful feeling. And then it came to the point in September of this year, where I had another event. I never knew when they were coming, but they were always at night when I was walking back to my bed, and it would just come on. I suddenly realized this one was a little bit different in what I was feeling. It wasn't just full-on anxiety, it was a drowning. I quickly realized what I was clearing for this individual. I quickly realized that it was this individual that I was clearing for since April until September. That's when it clicked in. I'm like, I'm drowning, because I knew this past life for this very close soul to me included a drowning at the end of this life. The life that they're clearing now in all the things they're doing in their human life has to do with. And I'm like, oh my God, as this is happening, I can't breathe. My lungs would not expand. They would not expand. And I thought, I'm drowning. I'm going through their drowning from their past life. Because remember, past lives, we could talk all day long about this again. I want you to understand how important they are to right now. A lot of us just go, oh, that's just the past life. That doesn't matter. What matters is now. I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of the trauma, a lot of the things you're going through, a lot of the energy surrounding you, the people coming your way, has to do with clearing past lives. Because remember, we're bringing in all this karmic stuff, all this stuff we didn't get right, all this stuff we owe people, all this stuff they owe us. And we're playing it over again, right? We're having to clear it, because you have to bring it back to what they always tell me is 0 point, right? 0 point, absolutely. So that brings it back to, and that's what they consider it is, you did the thing, right? And it's like, it created this energy out there, but guess what? It's not divinely aligned. So you did this thing, and now you got to go do this thing to negate it and bring it back to, oh, wow, do I have chills, to what they're calling 0 point. Like, and they keep showing this funneling back into, okay, they just said the end of time. Okay, so remember how I've talked about how ultimately when this is all said and done, will collapse in, everything will collapse in as we have completed this cycle, collapse in, and then we are into the, I'll just say the oneness, or what you might want to call the 0 point, or the nothingness, is how they're describing it to me. All right, so that's what we're doing in past lives. Super important. And when you understand your past lives, let me tell you, particularly if you have stuff going on now and you're like, I don't know where this is coming from. What is happening to me? I am suffering greatly. I need to understand, because a lot of us are those kinds of folks who, when we intellectually understand something, we go, oh. And they've always said, when mind, body, and soul put it together into the great oneness of understanding, what happens is now healing can really begin. So we're still healing every single day, working through these things. However, our body and our soul always knows. Our body brings in it with all the cellular memory, and our soul is all-knowing. And when the human mind can go, oh, I get it. It's amazing what can just be unleashed. So that's past lives. Point is, these past lives now, what was happening is I was taking on this drowning. It was traumatic, dramatic, and I used my process to get me through it. But this is when I realized, oh my God, this is the second time I am clearing for someone who is incredibly close to me. This does not always happen. I will tell you, you will not do this lightly. You may not do this at all because it is rather, okay, they keep saying uncommon. It's rather uncommon, but it can happen typically with, and I don't really try to get into labels, but we're just going to use them for this purpose, soulmates and twin flames, okay? It's not usually a soul group kind of thing. It is a serious taking on of work that you're helping the collective with, but what you're doing is you're doing it through helping one individual clear their karmic stuff. So this is what was happening to me. So what we've got here for a first opportunity of you encountering another energy, okay, in your vessel that will cause you to have something occur or act out or not be yourself. And we'll talk about trying to be able to identify some of this. This is when you have a contracted situation. So it's contracted with another soul. That's one of the, I'll just call it pests because it feels like a pest, but you're really doing work that was intended. However, what happened to me in September, as I was taking a walk, I finally said out loud, we're done. It's like my higher self came in and said, you know, you've contracted up to this point. Now it's their turn. You've done the big work. You just got done doing the drowning, which closes this out. And I knew, and I just went, as I'm walking, I just said out loud, I'm done. We're not doing this anymore. I'm done doing this. You're on your own. I'm done. I'm done. And during that walk, I just felt fully released. And guess what? For the first time in what I knew was months, guess who was breathing again? I could not get over the hill, if you know what that means. When we take those deep breaths like I just did now, ooh, wow, I just got chills too. And we're able to get over that hill and have these beautiful, just really beautiful deep breaths. I wasn't having any of those since April. And I think a lot of us who have anxiety and panic attacks and things like that, we have trouble getting that deep breath. That was unknown to me. In my entire life, I don't think I've had, maybe I had one panic attack at one point, but I did not know what this was. And so it was very terrifying, honestly, to me. But I didn't let that overtake me. The point in this is I ended it. I said, the contract's done. This is done. This is done. I knew this was done. You know, when you start getting really connected into your journey and understanding of your journey, these things start to happen. Your higher self will work with you and then shuts that down. And the human knows. So I knew. I was like, this is done. This is done. And I now know what I did. I now know what this was about. This was a contracted situation with a soul close to me. And that energy showed up in me. That was purposeful. That we sign up for. And again, it's not that common, but you never know. So I wanted you to be aware of that. So the second kind of, what I'll just say is a pest energy, and we're just using that for the purpose of describing this, is searching souls. Okay? Searching souls. So here's my experience. This was obviously all during the same time, and the same process happened to me every single time, but I was able to identify it very specifically to a different scenario that was happening. It wasn't with the one that I was contracting. I was able to pull it out, but it was the same process that was happening to me. I'd actually been out to dinner with a friend in a cafe, sitting outdoors, and it was packed. We were outdoors. I want to say it was kind of May, June timeframe of this past year. And I remember thinking, I don't really want to be here. Well, I love my friend to death. Why I would not want to be there, I have no idea. I think it was very pointed understanding of my higher self trying to say to me, you know, this probably is not the best place for you to be right now energetically. Well, guess what I did? I also had 2 drinks. So I remember what we do when we drink alcohol or we do drugs or whatever it is, you know, that opens us up, you know, those habits we have, opens us up to more, hello, I'm here, and kind of, you know, chink in the armor of your auric field. And then guess what? You've offered this opportunity for them to show up, particularly as we gain in more light, as we continue to rise in frequency and vibration. All right, you need to understand that as we keep going through this journey, these habits don't serve us any longer. And you will find that out through experience, because I, over and over again, I've been trying. I'm like, oh, no, I really want a glass of wine. I really would like to have, a couple glasses of wine. And then guess what? Guess who pays for it? Honestly, I do. So what happened in this circumstance is I'm sitting in the cafe with my friend having the 2 drinks, and I'm not feeling right. I'm not feeling right at all. I felt like I shouldn't be there. I was like, I'm not enjoying myself. I just want to go home. And I really had wished I hadn't gone. So that is so unlike me. I got home, didn't think much more of it, went to bed again, woke up, came back to bed. It's always when I'm walking back to bed, and it hits me. And all of a sudden I realize I'm not able to breathe. It always has this primary focus is I get constricted right here, which then in turn I later find out is this is where I have some blockage. When the energy moves through me, my throat chakra, it kind of gets stuck there. That's a whole other conversation. But needless to say, so that energy's rolling through me and I then can't breathe. And that's a sign for me that something's happening in the middle of the night, of course, of all times. But the key difference here was I knew, and remember, I'm pretty tapped in. I all of a sudden realized that something different was happening. This was not the contracted situation. I realized I started to have thoughts of, oh, this must be what it's like when somebody wants to commit suicide. So remember what happens with me. In all of my scenarios that I had going on, the human's always here doing this logical thing, like observing this and going, oh, that's this. Oh, but then there's also me doing the like, oh God, what is going on here? What's going on? And having those thoughts. I knew that wasn't my thought. Though I knew those were not my thoughts. This was the first time this had ever happened to me where an actual thought of somebody else had infiltrated me. And then to that end, I could feel this whirling energy, like another something that was happening to me at the same time, but I couldn't identify it. I got up I used my process, which I'm going to tell you about here. I knew that it was something different, and I knew I had experienced something where some energy had entered me that had to do with somebody not feeling like they wanted to live anymore or going through so much struggle that this is what they were thinking about. Needless to say, the next day I wake up and I actually ended up having a Reiki session. These have all been scheduled magically with the person I do Reiki sessions with. And I said to her, here's what I think happened. She completely agreed with me. And what I had told her was, I said, I think I connected with somebody, a searching soul, because remember, there's a lot we don't see, a searching soul out there who was sitting at that cafe looking for more light to keep this human going, okay? So what they see is me, right? They come and exchange my energy for their energy. So I took, again, remember this theme that I'm on is I take things on. We take things on lots of times as light workers for others and we don't even know it. So what I did was my soul exchanged light for that person to keep going, and then I took on their suicidal thoughts to keep them being able to move forward. Now, I haven't delved into, well, was I supposed to do that? I don't gather that I was supposed to do that. That was not a contracted situation. I was open, I'd had 2 drinks, and they saw me and then came in and took some of my light and then stayed with me, right? And had that, and then that happened to me. Additionally, during that time, I also had other energies swirling around me because in a bar environment, think about it, I'm in a cafe, it's a beautiful environment, but it's a lot of alcohol, right? A lot of alcohol. Guess what's swirling around? Waiting. And it's the truth. This is where we're at right now. Remember, the veil is thinner, so keep that in mind. I'm not saying you can't go have a drink or something. That's all got to be your choice, right? But just understand what can happen at these times. We are being called to something higher, so keep that in mind. Okay, so that is the second. The searching souls is what I'm calling them. The third one is opportunists. Seriously. Opportunists. So I had that, and that's actually the one that I had sitting at the cafe. It's that other energy that came in that's looking for everyone, looking over the cafe and going, okay, wow, I see this opportunity. There's a lot of light in that person. And there's also 2 glasses of wine. And oh boy, do I see her. Let's take this opportunity, which is exactly what can happen. So you have opportunistic energies, okay? These energies that are lower energies that are hanging out and really just, honestly, they said just looking for their target. Okay, so again, this is why we go back to your energy body is an incredibly important thing to maintain, as well as your physical body, mind, body, soul. We've got to really come to a higher place in how we are taking care of ourselves. And we all have these bumps and these, roller coasters of how we do that. But if you're like me, you're going to experience it. The higher you go in frequency and vibration, they're going to experience more of a gap between the lower energy kinds of. You're going to feel more of a gap than you used to. Like we're vibing up here, and then you get pulled down further with the things that we used to do that were okay. Because guess what? Our vibration was here. Now it's here. That doesn't work. There's a bigger gap. So keep that in mind. So we have opportunistic energies that are just kind of hanging around, waiting to see. Okay? So I had 2 show up for that circumstance. But remember, my process of how I experience them is the same, with the subtle difference of me being able to identify, oh my God, this is going on. So the humans over here, just always remember this, because we're going to talk about how you can do that. Humans always over here, you never lose yourself, but you're having this very strange experience because of this energy, whichever one it was, that has entered into your awareness. All right, so we have the 4th one, which is really interesting. This is what I'll call elemental or land energies. Something where maybe I'll just say there's typically a connection that you have with that land, or you have with nature, or something where, and remember, elementals can be tricksters, but there's something there where you may owe something to the land. We're going to talk about my experience, but we've all had all different kinds of lives where we've spilt blood on sacred land, and land in general is sacred. Okay, so we have to pay the piper on this. And so what does that mean? We have to sometimes re-experience what we have done that has either harmed the land, harmed nature, done something that's okay. They just said okay, they're talking about the life force. The taking of the life force. Yeah, so basically committing murder, anything like that. That kind of thing. Spilled blood is what they're really talking about. So we can have land contracts coming into this life that we may have had a life on that land where we are now needing to clear that. And what I will say to you is, in your travels, if you travel and you travel to certain places, and you have a great deep desire to go to a certain place, or you have this need to be there and you go, and there's just feels like you know the place, very often you have had a past life there, and there's a reason you are there. Now, you might not ever have an experience like I had, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but what I want you to know is there's always a reason we travel to where we're traveling. We are either picking up aspects of ourselves, again, from being there. We are working with the land to clear something from our past. We may not necessarily know it, but as we become more and more in tune with ourselves as a spiritual being, as an energy body, these knowings start coming into our awareness. We start understanding why we're where we are, which goes to my trip in New Mexico. I was recently in New Mexico. I knew I needed to go. I knew I had a land contract, but I didn't know what that meant. That was news to me, right? I had a land contract. Actually, I knew something was up with me going, but the gal that I do Reiki with said to me, "You've got a land contract there." I kind of let that go. I didn't really even think about it. I just knew I needed to go to Choco Canyon. I had this great drive to go there. But I'm kind of one of those where I'm like, okay, well, that's good and well. I'm just going to go have fun and hike, right? I'm not there searching out the thing that I'm supposed to be there for. But guess what? It shows up. So what happened to me is I go to Choco Canyon. I realize I knew that I had a past life in New Mexico, at least one. I then spend half a day in Choco Canyon, and I remember saying to myself, because I was about one of the only ones there on the thousands and thousands of acres hiking around, and I said to myself, well, that was beautiful, and it felt great, but it was nothing magical happened. So I said, where's the magical thing that was supposed to happen to me? And I hear, as I'm leaving, oh, that's coming. In other words, that's coming up. And I kind of went, okay, whatever. Maybe I'm going to have a knowing or something. And all right, whatever. So I had a really wonderful experience. I highly recommend Choco Canyon. But I would say to you, if you go, you're going to want to take 2 days at least. Don't do what I did in 5 hours. I mean, if that's all you have, great. But you'll miss a lot like I did. So I'm going back someday. Anyway, the point in this is when I left, I went back to my hotel. I was then going to fly out the next day. I had to drive to Albuquerque. Point is here, that night, I go to bed. And I hadn't had one of these events for, maybe 2 months. It would have been at least a month and a half. And I come back to bed, of all times when I'm traveling and I'm not even in my home, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Again, coming back to my bed, one comes on. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And then I kind of started to do this fear thing of, I'm out of town. I'm not at home. What if I have to call an ambulance and they can't get into this facility? And there's all these people and blah, blah, blah. So the human was doing this, and I thought, I've got to calm myself, which I'm going to give you my process here in a little bit. But I thought, okay, what am I going to do? Needless to say, I go through my process, but at the same time, I end up with, again, here we go, the mind thoughts went through me. I knew I was observing this, but I knew something had taken me over, had joined me, because all I saw, and this was a psychological attack. This was the first one I'd had, where it was the suicidal one was too. Sorry, need to back that up. This one was a massive psychological attack because all I saw, it was like a montage, and I saw blood, and I saw war, and I saw but I couldn't see it specifically, but it was not good, and it was mass murder. It was bad. I could just tell. It was almost like a lot of paint just thrown up, and you had to kind of figure out what the art was or what it was representing. And so all of a sudden, as I'm having this happen in my mind, and I'm lying in bed like this, just lying in bed, and it's just going through me, all of a sudden I had the thought of, I wonder what it's like to murder people. And I was like, so the human's doing this thing, because I know that's not me. That's not me thinking that. That's not me. Thank heavens, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's another energy that has showed up to make me think about the scenario that I was seeing, which is, I wonder what it's like to murder people. And that's when I realized, now, a lot of people could go into complete panic on that, right? But I didn't. I used my process. I knew what was happening because I know myself. I knew that wasn't me. I'm a very stable person. I did not have anything like that occur as thoughts. I knew an energy had entered me, and I immediately knew that this came from where I had been in Choco Canyon and was what they had said to me, oh, you'll see later. Well, turns out, long story short, what came back in my mind at this time as I was processing this was my land contract. This was my land contract. I then delve into this, and then I have it confirmed with synchronistic conversation with my Reiki person, which I had scheduled, believe it or not, that next day. Fortuitously, I end up realizing the life that I had known about in New Mexico, in Choco Canyon, actually had to do with me starting a they want me to say this, the bloodbath, basically. And that's what I saw in my vision. I had an agreement with the land not to spill blood, right? Yep, they're saying not to spill blood. Okay, on sacred land. Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm starting to feel really emotional right now. Wow, this is really interesting. Okay, they keep saying sacred land. So land is sacred, and the spilling of blood we have all kinds of repercussions from that. Needless to say, I was clearing that life. It was not pleasant. I was clearing that life of causing what essentially was massive amounts of spilled blood. And Choco Canyon has a super long history. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. The most recent history is 1,000 years, where they're able to, I think, date the structures to 1,000 years back. But there's longer history than that. So needless to say, I was in charge of having that traumatic event actually occur. And I had to, they just said pay the piper. So remember, why? Because we're clearing now. We can't keep this stuff with us. We're clearing out our cellular memory. So guess what? We have to do the thing of, okay, we created this event at one time, and now guess what? We got to clear it out again to come back into, okay, they just said to negate it in many ways, to negate it. So that's what we're doing now in this lifetime, and I will bet you can start looking at some of your experiences and realizing, wait a minute, that didn't feel like me. And here's the thing, remember, I'm really good at putting patterns together in big picture, so I was able to go, oh, this is what's happened to me from April until now. Needless to say, that night, it was all about clearing that life. It was all about re-experiencing that thought process I had back then. Now, the details around that aren't important, okay? But the idea of that land energy, that land spirit, okay? That land spirit joining me to say, okay, time to pay the piper. You remember what you did. Needless to say, I cleared that out. I have been free and clear since. I have not had anything like this happen. I am breathing unbelievably perfectly again with nice deep breaths. So from April until now, I feel, well, I guess you can never say you're done with these kinds of episodes, but I have come to an understanding through this process of April through now of how to actually manage these circumstances. And I'm going to get to my process that you can use, or you can use pieces of, or you can just use it for your own understanding and creating your process should this happen to you. Because I do believe that we probably are all having this happen to one degree or another. And again, most all of these are low-level energies for me. They're all low-level. And I know it doesn't sound like it, but they are. Okay, so what we've talked about today is pests, or in this case, other energies that can join us, are contracted situations where we have an actual human here with us, close soul, going through their stuff. We've contracted with them at this time of our journey and their journey to help them out. All right? Doesn't mean you need to keep going on it, but you'll know when that contract's done. Searching souls is another one. Searching souls. Desperate souls who are going through very difficult times per the soul that was struggling to even stay here in human form. Opportunistic energies floating around all over the place, just looking for us to do something silly and to join in. And then, of course, we have the elemental and land and earth energies. So what I would tell you is there may be more. But my point is I'm just giving you my experience today. I've had a massive year of shift and change and a lot of understanding of how this process works and what can happen to us. I used to always kind of dismiss this. I used to always kind of just go, that's not going to happen to me. Well, guess what happened in 2021? So don't ever say never. And this is why I'm doing this video today, so that you can have this in your back pocket. You can kind of think about it and learn from it and create your own process as something might occur to you. Again, this is not to put fear energy into you at all. This is, in fact, you're going to learn here very shortly, my process included not having any fear. Okay, so now what I'm going to talk about is the process that I put together and learned to use to honestly make the process stop that I was in when one of these energies, regardless of whether it was contracted or not, would be able to then subside in me. And in some cases, to actually remove that energy. So I'm not going to talk about the individual circumstances necessarily again, but what I did in each of those is I realized foundationally, and this is key, set fear aside. You cannot have fear. Now, the first thing we do is we would typically, as a human, go into fear. But what you want to remember, and you start knowing this the more you go through the awakening process, is we have all power inside of us. We are sovereign beings. We have the ability to keep out and to make leave those kinds of energies that do not serve us, that aren't meant to be with us. Now, yes, we have the contracted kinds of things like I was experiencing, but at the same time, we can manage that process. And then, like I did, say, okay, we're done. We're done. So needless to say, the number one thing we have to remember is no fear. No fear of the thing that we feel. Now, we may not even be able to identify what is occurring or that it's an energy. But I think the biggest thing to have in your back pocket is when we start to kind of feel funky and we start to not feel like ourselves, don't go into fear state. Just ground yourself and breathe. That's the number one thing that I did was no fear, ground yourself and breathe. Okay, now grounding is really difficult in a circumstance like this. So what I did was I just started breath work. And I learned the process of the 4 in through my nasal passages, the 4 in through my nose and 8 deep through my mouth. And that's all I focused on. And I'm not kidding you, that was the saving grace for me. So immediately going, oh, this thing is happening to me. Oh, I can feel this. I'm not going to have fear. I'm going to go into my process. So it was more like shifting over from the more human kind of thing to this very mechanical process that I had created for myself that worked in literally every single circumstance. So know that it's happening. Tell yourself you're not going to go into fear. Start the breath work. And as you do the breath work, again, what worked for me may not work for you, but it was 4 deep in through your nose and then 8 out through your mouth. Now, that can be really hard when you're in almost a panic anxiety mode, but that's also what's going to take you from that panic anxiety mode back to calmness, okay? Because basically, what I found for myself in the process that would always happen to me is all of my organs, every part of me was amplified energetically, and there was just too much energy going on as well. So what that would do for me, that breath work would take me from this very agitated state internally to this place of calmness and being able to breathe. Now, there were times where, like I said, when I was going through the drowning incident, I couldn't really do it very well, but I still did it. The process in and of itself, just going through those motions, even though I couldn't take deep breaths, was helpful to me. Now, what I did find happen after that, I also did something else, and depending on when or if these strike you in a place you're not able to do this would be a little different. You'd have to find your own process, but mine always were at night. I guess I have to say, with the exception of one during a daytime when I was driving. But I used the same process. I was able to drive and use the same process. The only part I couldn't do was this piece, which is try to go lie down. There is a tendency to feel like, and in my case, that I was going to screech out of my body and like literally leave my body. This is also part of when the Kundalini part happened. It was almost like the energies that entered me, or the like activated the Kundalini in at least one circumstance, but I would always feel like I was going to like leave my body and there would be nothing left of me. And so what I would do is always that breath work would help me really ground myself back into my body. So first of all, fear, set the fear aside, start to try to ground yourself through the breath work, which is what worked for me. Again, pick and choose if you want with these. And then thirdly is lying down. Your body's going to want to kind of move around, at least in my circumstance. Again, for me, this isn't going to be for everybody. My body wanted to move around because felt like I was coming out of my body, like I was going to just honestly lose it. And so I would make myself lie down and I would kind of just go into a ball and I would just breathe. And I would lie there and I would just breathe. And literally, that's what I did for the first few minutes, and I would do nothing else. I didn't even really have at the time, the forethought of saying, okay, team, I need your help here. Because we do have to call them in, right? That was kind of the first round where I was so wrapped up in just what was going on with me. But then I realized, okay, I need to call everyone in. So I called in Archangel Michael, and I didn't do it in a dramatic way. I just said, okay, guys, I need you here. I need this to end. Archangel Michael, I need you to make this energy leave. I also, in a few occasions, went and got my pendulum, but I did this typically afterwards, after I had calmed myself down. But I would lie there and I would call Archangel Michael, I would call in all of my team, and I would say, help remove this energy from me. It does not belong in me. This does not serve me. And let me tell you, that assisted me greatly. So all these things built up to eventually over an hour, and for me it would take an hour, of just being able to slowly come back into myself and realize that I was fine. And then I have to tell you, I was so exhausted afterwards, just so exhausted. Like the next day I felt different. I felt like, honestly, and I think this was the time when the Kundalini actually raced through, is like I felt like my brain had been adjusted in some way. And I think that's just because there's that different energy in you, right? So in my circumstance, it played out that way. But then after that hour where I would start feeling more calm. And remember, this is in the middle of the night. And I was, obviously very tired, but I would go get my pendulum and then I would clear myself and I would clear my space. This is all done while being very calm and knowing that I am a sovereign being. I have full control over who enters in and who doesn't. And the biggest part is to ground myself out of any kind of fear that I might feel. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's always that kernel that's sitting there. Because physically, this affected me so physically. I mean, when you can't breathe, it's pretty scary and you don't know what's going on. I eventually started to, obviously, after the first couple times, know what was going on. So my process, remove all fear, start the breath work, lie down, make yourself comfortable, focus on just the breath work and nothing else for that period of time, even if you're not doing it fully. And then what you want to do is call in your team, and you can call them in right away if you want, if you have the forethought. I just go right into my process, and then you will be amazed at the assistance that you are given when you're going through these situations. But first of all, we got to get out of fear. We can't freak out. We can't get frenetic. We just can't. And it's very hard to not go to that place, but pull in your power, know who you are, and know what doesn't serve you, and then ask all of that to leave. So anyway, that's how I manage my process of when an energy joins up with me that in most cases does not serve me, and yet in some cases where I was actually contracted to help out. For me, it was the same feeling, the same process of the thing that actually occurred. Then I was able to decipher what the event was actually connected to. And for me, that's incredibly important to be able to understand. Okay, so they just said take the reins. Exactly. Take back your power. Take the reins. And even if you're contracted for something, take the reins of that moment in time when this is occurring for you, when you're helping this individual clear. Now, we're not going to always know that, like I said, but the point is in my circumstance, I started to understand this, but it was at the very end. But I used my process. Every time I used my process, okay? And that's the key. And then you're going to probably, as if you have a patterned kind of situation going on, start intellectualizing and thinking, what might this be? What could this be? And of course, as you know, that's what I do in my services. We work on understanding what your current journey is all about. So there's all these services like this that I offer where we can help unravel that, help you understand it, and help you work through these things even more fully. So I hope today that my situation that I've been in over the last year, which has been so unique, it's in the most unique year. I've never had any of these encounters before. I hope at least something here helps you if you're ever to encounter this in your journey. I do believe we are more likely to, since the veil is thinning, we're more likely to just run into all kinds of energetics, all kinds of beings, all kinds of, just across the veil. It's happening. It's happening more and more. And I think, too, then, as we really focus on the foundation, I will always tell you this, focusing on the foundation of how we're caring for ourselves, like me. I realize now I can't drink. I mean, I know I've said that before, but, this was a knowing that took place over the course of 2021 for me. Just a couple drinks for me is not a positive thing, and it opens me up. It opens me up to saying, hey, I'm here, come join me, when in reality, that's not what I'm asking for at all. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've taken a little nugget of something away for your own journey, another puzzle piece for the puzzle of your own life. Again, as a reminder, purplerainhealing.com, where you can get your own channeled messages, and I can also help you forward in your awakening, ascension, and your life journey by the one-on-one mentoring. It's a service that has been so popular, and I really get to know you. We get to work together regularly, and it's an opportunity for you to bring to the sessions anything you want to work on. So with that said today, check out purplerainhealing.com. I would love to work with you. And what better time than to start off in the new year? So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video.